See them all pouring in.
Absolutely. We'll give a couple more minutes to get everyone in and then we'll start. Awesome. All right. Kia ora koutou katoa, kua no ingarangi o ko tupuna ke tamaki makoro aho I noho ana. Nā reira, ka mihi, ki ngā munga, ngā iwi, mi ngā wahi tapu o tamaki. Ke korowha Aotearoa aho I mahi ana, ko Davison toku whānau, ko Emily toku ingoa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora koutou katoa, kua hui hui mai nei, ki tēnei kaupapa rangatira. Ka nui ti harakawa ki a koutou I tēnei rā. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hi everybody, my name is Emily and I work for New Zealand Golf, and on behalf of myself and our New Zealand Golf team, I want to thank you today for your time and your commitment to be here today, and we want to express our apologies that it's not in person, but also our excitement that we are going to still have our Women and Girls Hui. It will just be held on the 30th of November instead. So New Zealand Golf, we are really committed in enhancing the experiences and creating more opportunities for women to learn, to play, to compete, to work and to volunteer in our game. And today we wanted to start the conversation and the momentum around the challenges that women and girls face in sport and what's happening globally and internationally for women in sport. We encourage you today to ask questions throughout the session. There is a Q&A box at the bottom, and all of the panelists and myself can see the questions that you ask. So drop them in there at any point during the session and we'll answer them as we're going. I'm really excited today to be joined by the incredible Dr. Sarah Leberman and Pauline Harrison. We are incredibly lucky to have them here with us today, both having extensive knowledge in the women and girls space. And so Pauline and Sarah, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. So if you could tell us a bit about yourself, that would be awesome. And I'll throw that to Pauline first, if that's all right.
Thanks, Emily, and good afternoon, everybody. I can recognize some names on there, so already we are getting performance anxiety. Anyway, just as a little introduction, as you can hear, I'm from the UK and only recently saw the light and moved to New Zealand. But the heart of my story, I guess, are two passions. Firstly, a passion for sport, and secondly, a passion for people. And in particular, supporting people to achieve their dreams in and through sport mostly. So inevitably, in the first stage of my career, I took an early path working in schools. I was a physical education teacher, and then moved on to a lecturer to help others to teach. And whilst doing this as a profession, I spent considerable time as a volunteer, as we do, in coaching. And I guess the second stage of my pathway happened when I took an opportunity to leave the education sector to pursue my coaching interest and work in national governing bodies of sport in the UK, where I worked for about 20 years. And I was really fortunate at that time to be able to move up the sports administration ladder, culminating in a chief executive role at England Netball. And then I morphed into being a consultant, combining my teaching, coaching and leadership background. And I was able to really spend time in the area of my two passions, which was advocating for and leading programs which aim to improve opportunities for women and girls in sport. And it's been my absolute privilege to work with some amazing women around the world who have the capacity and capability to lead, to empower, to encourage and inspire our communities. But as we know, just need a little nudge of encouragement on that pathway. So that's really me. I am an enthusiastic and aspirational golfer, hence my link to Emily. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you, Pauline, and you've been an incredible help to us, so thank you for that, as always. Hi, Sarah. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Ina mana, ina reo, ina hauwha, tēnā koutou katoa. Nā mihi mahana ki a koutou kua hui mai nei I tēnei zui. No England, no Russia, ko Poland o ko tupuna. No Cambridge, England aho. I whānau mai au I Cambridge, England. I tupu ake au I Heidelberg, Germany. Kei au kautare aho e noho ana. Ko Brett, tōku hoa rangatira. Ko Phoebe, taku tamahine. Ko Sarah Leberman, toko ingoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome. Thank you very much, Emily, for the opportunity to be part of this webinar. So that was a little bit about me, for those of you that understood some of that. So my ancestors are from England, Poland, and Russia. I was born in England, but I spent a lot of my growing up ages in Heidelberg in Germany. And when I was in Germany growing up, I was involved in sport from a young age. So I've always really liked sport and physical activity. And when I was young, I was really just participating in things. And then as I have got older, I've become more involved in organising things, leading groups, leading teams, being involved in the outdoors, so physical activity, as well as team sports, hockey, basketball. And then more recently, as I have got older, have learnt how to surf, not very well. And Taekwondo is the other thing I do, which I started when my daughter was 6. She's just about to turn 18. So being involved in lots of different parts of sport, both as a participant, an instructor, stroke coach, a board member, co-founded Women in Sport Aotearoa, and also as an academic. I've worked at Massey University for nearly 30 years now, originally as a rec officer at the Recreation Centre, so the practical side of things, but also setting up an academic program. And I've always had a passion for working with others, being with others, and trying to facilitate and enable them to be able to be the best that they can be at whatever they do. So that's really my driving force. The other thing that I've always been passionate about is standing up against inequity. So from a young age, I've always been the one who will raise questions and ask whether there's a better way that we could do things, whatever it might be. So that's how I end up in this space. And I guess I'm still asking those questions and still trying to work towards equity in the biggest sense of the word. So that's not just equity for women, but equity for all groups. And so it's a big job. So we'll just chip away at it. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. You both have such a wealth of knowledge to share with us. So I'm really, really grateful for your time today. Thank you both so much for being here. Another question that I'd really love to hear from, an answer to hear from you both would be, what are you most excited about in the women and girls space at the moment? You've both been incredibly influential in various different spaces for women and girls. So I'm really keen to hear what you're most excited about. Pauline, you've got your mic off.
Yep. Well, I've been a part of the women's sport movement for many years, and I guess it's a bit like Sarah in that I always wanted to, I always believed and hoped that we can get to a gender equal world if we work together. That's men and women, and it's about influencing and advocating for change. And just a little bit of background, because we'll be talking about this a bit later on. In 1994, which I know some of you won't remember, but I certainly do, the IWG, which is the International working group on women in sport, and it's very carefully placed behind Sarah. Thank you for that backdrop. It was formed at the first ever global conference on women in sport, which was held in England. And it was then that really inspired me to get on board with this movement. And out of that conference came a document called the Brighton Declaration. Some of you may have heard of it, which basically set out a number of principles to guide action that was intended to increase the involvement of women in sport at all levels and in all roles. But in those 25 or so years since then, the change has been glacial, I might say. So that's the bad news. But the good news, and the thing that I really am excited about, is that sport is now capitalizing on all the good work that government and businesses have done in recent years in recognizing the benefits that diversity brings to a country, a community, an organization. And gradually we've introduced quotas and targets and seen those as acceptable to make change. And sport, and indeed New Zealand, have definitely capitalized on this. And the thing that is really exciting is that doors are beginning to open. And I know that there are strong women and men ready and willing to walk right on through those doors. And it's my job to step back and just give people a little bit of a push through those doors.
So for me, the things that I'm most excited about are youth, young people coming through, the voice of young people, and that's been enabled largely through access to social media. If we look at what's been happening in the world and the ability to have a voice, to be heard when you bring lots of voices together, and young people wanting change. So for me, it is about creating a better world. And I know it sounds cliche, but I really would like to think that in 25 years, the next 25 years, we don't still have people sitting here who are 25 years older having the same conversation. So I really am hoping that we will have moved a little bit forward rather than this glacial moving that we've been doing over the last 25 years. And I think we're in a good place to be able to do so if we are brave enough to pause, reflect, think about what a system designed for equity would look like in sport, and how you might build that. So I think there's some things to think about there. The other thing that I'm also really excited about, and it's something that I've always been really passionate about, is it's easy to kind of talk about men and women and think that we're all this homogeneous group of women. Actually, we're all very different. And so the word intersectionality, which I was so proud that our Minister for Sport used last week in the launch of the Change Inspires Change campaign for the IWG conference, is very, very dear to my heart, and particularly in Aotearoa, where we are founded on the Treaty of Waitangi, and so we have a bicultural society, and we need to be really mindful that the experience of mine as a white woman of a certain age who has immigrated to this country is completely different to someone who may have been born here, someone who's Māori, someone who's Pacifica, someone who is Asian, all the other intersectionalities around sexual orientation, religion, class, ability, you know, there's a long list. Some we can see, some we can't see, but really being mindful that not all women and girls are the same. And so they have other issues. And so for me, it's about making sure when we have these conversations, we think about that as well. So it's not just women assuming we are all the same. So those are two things, youth and intersectionality.
Thank you. Yeah, there is this absolute global movement towards empowering women and girls to be more active. And I love the recognized value that sport and recreation has on health and well-being outcomes. I think we're in a really exciting time at the moment, and it's a really exciting time to work in sport as well. And those issues that you've raised, Sarah, that I really look forward to digging in with you a bit later on. Just I guess set a bit of context around golf for us. We're really excited that we can contribute towards this movement that's happening in sport, and we acknowledge we've got a long journey ahead of us, but we're really committed to contributing. And the RNA now have a really strong focus on gender balance and providing a united position for the golf sector. In May 2018, the RNA created a Women and Girls Charter, and this charter intends to inspire an industry-wide commitment to developing a more inclusive culture around the world for golf. So New Zealand Golf are a signatory of this charter. And look, we know women are underrepresented in our game, but what we do know is through our She Loves Golf campaign, we saw over 6,000 new women introduced to our game last year alone. So we know there is an appetite out there, we know there is an interest, but we need to do more, and we want to do more to retain them into our game. So while we have done some great work in this space already, we want to do more. And so New Zealand Golf intend to develop an all-encompassing national women and girls approach. And to do this, to create a strong plan, we need to identify the nature of our challenge. And what better people to have to discuss that with us than Sarah and Pauline. So Sarah and Pauline, my next question to you will be, what are the challenges and barriers for women and girls in sport? And I think Sarah, should we go to you first?
Yeah, sure. So Pauline and I had a bit of a chat, so we don't talk about the same things. So I'm going to focus on coaching, and I think Pauline's going to focus on governance. We just kind of picked two areas. So coaching, some of you may well be aware that through High Performance Sport New Zealand, there was a survey that went out last year to really get some understanding of what the coaching landscape looks like for women in Aotearoa. And it went beyond high performance, because we know there's not many women coaches in the high performance sport environment. So it went out, and it went to over 300 women who responded to the survey. And I think it's important to share some of the things that we found. So I'm just going to share for you some of the most significant challenges facing female coaches in New Zealand. And so what we found at the individual level, the top three areas that women coaches were facing were stress or burnout, feeling of isolation, and lack of confidence and personal ability. All right, so that was the first one, individual level. At the interpersonal level, the top three were, first off, ongoing old boys club culture, secondly, work-life balance, and thirdly, family commitments. At the organisational level, there was gender bias in selection and recruitment processes, time demands on the role, a lack of support systems for women coaches. And then if we take it up the next level, so sociocultural, big macro level, lack of acceptance of women coaches in general, greater scrutiny for women coaches when they do get into those public roles, and negative stereotypes of female coaches. All right, so those were the barriers that came out of the research that was done. And as I say, I think it was 317 women who completed the survey from a whole range of sports within Aotearoa. And the framework we used is based on Dr. Nicole Lavoie's work. So she's based at the Tucker Centre at the University of Minnesota, and is probably one of the world experts around women in coaching. And it's her ecological framework that we used to frame up the question so that we could compare it to the international data. And the findings are very similar to what is happening internationally. So that's some of the barriers, I guess, the challenges that are there. We did also ask them about the opportunities. So let's finish on the opportunities, because I think that's a good space to be. So the most significant opportunities emerging for women coaches in New Zealand, ranked by them, were the number of skilled and experienced women coaches. So it's not that we lack them, it's just that they're generally not visible and we can't see them, and they're not given opportunity. They also noted the increased interest in women's sport in community and the media. So it's about that value and visibility, having it in the profile. And then also investment in coach development programs targeted at women. So there are a number of sports that have started looking specifically into this space. So if I could name some, so I know because I'm working with them. So basketball has set up a program, rowing has set up a program. I think tennis might be thinking about setting up a program. So there's some sports that are really looking at what they can do target at their women coaches. And so we also asked them what would help them be the best coach they can be, you know, so about opportunities. And the first thing they said was more practical, hands-on learning opportunities, i.e. being able to work with more senior coaches. The second thing was more accessible coach mentoring programs. And the third one was better access to interactive coach development resources. So that would help them. And then the other question was, you know, what knowledge or skills need developing to coach at the highest performance level? So that was more about that, but you're probably in New Zealand Golf, you'll be looking at all of your levels. So I just thought I'd share that as well. So it was about better understanding of athlete emotional and cognitive development, increased self-awareness of coaching style, and then increased self-confidence, right? So that gives you an idea of the lay of the land around coaching in New Zealand. And you may have seen that High Performance Sport New Zealand has invested quite a bit of money into this space. And there was a launch, I think 10 days ago, of their program. And they have, one of their programs is aimed just at coaches. And there's 9 women coaches in that program. And then there's another part of the program which has both people in leadership roles that are not coaching. And there's 3 coaches in that as well. So there's a few. But if you think about across Aotearoa, there are hundreds of other women coaches that really we don't have a good consolidated effort to be able to offer something for those that wish to aspire to keep in coaching and not to drop out. So that's kind of a coaching lens quickly with some background. Is that enough for now? I'll hand over to Pauline for governance.
Well, having said we wouldn't replicate each other, when we're talking about any role that's in leadership or governance, I think we're talking very similar things. You know, it's I can just talk a little bit about my own experience, and I know many of you, just scrolling down the names of the people, the few people that I can see on the list, you know, you'll be in roles, and it's lonely out there as a female leader in organizations or structures that have, when you're surrounded by men, particularly when, if you're like me, and I believe many of you will be, you believe that it's about building strong, positive relationships. That's the key to any role, but particularly in leadership or governance, because then you can build that mutual trust and respect that helps you be influential through your life and your career. And actually that's been my personal philosophy. So it's really hard to build these relationships as a woman when you are in a man's world. And I found that throughout my life. And when I was a chief executive in the UK, I was one of only 2 women out of 150 national governing bodies in that role. And it's hard enough to keep our head above water in a role without trying to advocate and create change. Because when you're trying to build relationships, then the networking and social opportunities are not so obvious for a female. And they do present these invisible barriers. And in fact, when we're talking about the barriers in relation to governance and leadership, and very similar to the coaching personal factors you were pulling out, Sarah, is that networking is one of the most 3 common obstacles that hold women back in getting into governance roles in their careers. The other 2 are confidence, surprise, surprise. And the other one, which I think you alluded to, was about women feeling comfortable to be ourselves. We need to celebrate our own unique female qualities, and that's really tough to do. It's linked to confidence, to be who we want to be without having to take on any male qualities or fit into any society or cultural norms. And I think being a lonely leader inspired me to set up a network for women working in sport in the UK. We called it Females Achieving Brilliance, which some of you might have heard me talk about, or abbreviated to FAB. So we're always fab women doing fab things. But the point was to provide a support network and opportunities for personal development in a safe environment. And again, that's something that Sarah has demonstrated through the research. And it's really what I guess one of the outcomes of this particular session and the follow-up Hui might lead to some sort of support network for women in golf, because it's no different from sport to sport in New Zealand and indeed around the world. It's the most common thing that I've come across. And I guess the other really important factor is that we need to have more strong female leaders who can be visible role models. Because we've heard the phrase, you can't be what you can't see. And in all stages of my career, I've been really fortunate to have had people who can provide me with advice and guidance, male or female, but having that female role model has been critical. And without those people in the positions of leadership or governance, then other women are less likely to put their hands up and apply for positions. So I guess there's the challenges and the solutions all mixed in together, really. And you know, if golf is going to make a difference to women and girls in this country, then I do think that these are the sort of things that we need to take on board and really make an absolute priority.
Can I maybe jump in? There's a couple of questions here in the Q&A. Now, can I just check, can everybody see those questions, or do I need to repeat them?
In the Q&A or the chat?
In the Q&A.
Would you like to repeat them, Sarah?
Okay, so there's a question here from Sally Shaw, and good question, but it links to the anonymous attendee question. So Sally's question is, club has its AGM next week, it's a golf club. Women are continually forgotten about in governance, e.g. not consulting with women's section about return to golf after lockdown, changes to the course without consulting women. The board, in brackets all men, really wants women to join the board, but who in their right mind would want to join a group that just to bang the drum for women within a disinterested culture? Vicious cycle leads to breakdown in comms and further separates women and men. Any thoughts? And then the anonymous person asks, you talk about there being barriers and opportunities at a number of levels. At what level should we be focusing our efforts initially to create change? So it kind of, in my view, link together. So what I was going to talk about was this notion of inclusion, right? And you mentioned it, Emily, when you were talking about inclusion. So what some sports are doing, and we should applaud them. So for example, New Zealand Cricket, you may know, has basically mandated that there needs to be at least 2 women on all of their boards, and that's all the way through, right from the top, all the way down to the association and club level. So that's a great start. However, just having women or Māori or anybody on the board does not mean they are included. It ticks a box. So that bit about the culture part that Sally was talking about is really critical. So it is, one, the research would show us that ideally you need at least three women on a board to actually make that change, assuming the rest are men, because just having 1 is going to be really difficult. 2 is better, 3 is the best, and that's based on some research out of Australia. But it's more than just saying we have a spot for you. It's actually about inclusion. It's about the culture. It's about changing that. And I firmly believe that the role of the chair in those situations is critical. And it's looking at, because the chair can really frame up what the culture and the environment is. So inclusion, creating a sense of belonging. But then I also think the thing we need to be mindful of is this notion of symbolic equality. So what that means is that we have a whole lot of legal, we have a whole lot of laws that actually have in law enshrined, for example, that we should all be paid the same. Equal Pay Act, 1973. But we know there's a gender pay gap in New Zealand. I think it's about 9-point-something%. But we also know that that gender pay gap varies by sector. It varies by, so if I'm a Māori woman, or I'm a Pacifica woman, or I'm a, Pacifica woman with a disability, my pay gap is way, way, way larger than 9%. So thinking about how that impacts what we do. So Sally's question is, you need more than one, which she already knows, and you need to change the culture by having probably a chair who could still be a man, but needs to be an ally, an active ally, somebody who actually wants to drive change and be part of it and not feel threatened and feel like the whole way of being is being changed. So it's about kind of dropping the ego and going for what do we need going forward. And that links to the question about at what level. My view is we don't have the luxury of just to do one level. From my perspective, it's about changing the structure and the system, because if we think about the structure and the system, to be blunt, it was built by white men, for white men, heterosexual white men, in a certain pace and culture. That is no longer fit for purpose. And so what we've been trying to do over many years is, if you imagine the system as a box, we've been trying to add on, oh, women, oh, and now we need Māori, oh, and now we have people who have disabilities. How are we going to do it? But the box stays the same, if we think that. So we need to not retrofit, we need to design for equity from the start, and how might that system and structure look like? And it will change things. But remember, people, and that includes women, have been privileged by the system to where they've got to. So you have to let go of it. So it's a big job. So that's the top level on structure. I also think we need to start at the bottom and provide programs. That's why we run Women in Leadership program in all different contexts, in sport, but in business and everywhere else. And that's kind of, we need to help women a little bit and give them up. So you'll see many people say lack of self-confidence. So often these programs, it's not about skills necessary. It's about creating a community of practice of other women who you can draw some strength from. And then that often helps build your confidence, and you have other people that you can go to and talk to. So a long-winded answer, but I do think all those things are important.
We also have another question here. How important are older, more experienced women in providing a helping hand up to the next generation of younger women coming through? Often women themselves can be a barrier.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick that one up. I think, yes, often women stay, as men do, stay in roles too long because they feel that younger people don't have the experience, but then that becomes the vicious cycle. In my view, it's about more experienced women now taking on the role as mentors. Because as I said earlier, I think that's one of the most important things in anybody's career, to have someone who is providing you with that advice and guidance, giving you some confidence. And those women who have been in committee roles all their lives have got all that experience. And perhaps it's just about having a little policy in a club or an organization where everyone who has that experience takes on a mentee or a younger, less experienced young woman to help them get to know their way around the systems and structures. So I really believe it is important that we have that built into all our systems.
And we also have a question there from Mark. Is New Zealand Golf or the PGA helping to create more women more female golf coaches. So we currently have a female coaching network, but it's only Auckland based at the moment, and it has been a trial, and we meet quarterly. And I think with the national approach, we'll look to expand that in partnership with the PGA to be national, and then look at what we can do to support leadership roles and women who are working in our industry as well.
Can I just take the one from Denise? So you've asked the question about the government or government coalition. So in my opinion, and it is my personal opinion, to have someone like the Honourable Grant Robertson for sport and recreation, we cannot do any better. In the end, he was the person who drove the women and girls strategy. It was his idea, and he launched that when he first came in. So the fact that he did that, the fact that he has championed it, the fact that he is committed to this, I don't think we can do much better. Now, obviously, even if the government gets in again, there's no guarantee that he'll keep that portfolio. But I'd also argue that it's very helpful to have him have both portfolios of finance and the sport and rec area. So my personal view is we'll do great with having him in that role going forward if they should get elected again.
And just to add to that, if I may, I think what we found around the world, and I've done some work in leadership globally and indeed coaching, is that all the various initiatives and activities that we've set up over the years do have an impact, but it's only in a very small way and in a local way. What we really, really need is really good policy, strong, bold policy that is going to make a difference. So the answer to you, Denise, is what government coalition will make a difference. It's any government that's prepared to accelerate gender equality through very bold policy making. We can't just set up initiatives and programs and projects anymore. There's lots of well-intentioned people have been doing this for many, many years. And my belief, my strong belief, is that now it is about us being bold and setting targets, setting quotas, and being very strong about gender equality policies. And I'm not even sure we know what they look like yet. It would be a really interesting piece of work to pull out what countries or what organizations have set some really good policies around gender equality.
Well, a really basic way of starting is for all clubs, all NSOs, RSOs to look at their constitutions and to change their constitution to make it 50-50. And then it's there, right? And so then you have to work from there. So that's a really basic thing to do, but it depends on how your club or your NSO or RSO is structured, because it depends who has the votes and whether you can get that through. But that would be one way to do it, because then it's not about, oh, we're being nice, we're letting in some women, or we're letting in some men if you have lots of women on your board. It's about, actually, the whole point about this is about diversity on boards and in leadership teams make better decisions. So there's a social justice case about that's how it should be, but there is also, if you need to make it, a business case, which would argue that you get to much better decisions and it's better for the organisation long term.
Thank you. Hey, we've touched on coaching and governance. I was just wondering if you guys could give us a quick summary around the challenges for participants as well. If one of you would like to take that, and potentially the opportunity for participants as well. So those that are learning or playing or looking to compete.
Over to you, Sarah.
Okay, so I can't really talk about golf because I don't know anything about golf, but if we talk more generally, and again, so this is part of the wider government strategy. So they have 3 pillars, and those pillars are leadership, participation, and value and visibility. So at least under that strategy, the women and girls strategy, there is a very, very strong emphasis on participation, particularly aimed at younger women, so basically under 18s. Because we know that there's a significant dropout, higher than for boys, in sport and active recreation of girls. And so it's about trying to redress that so that we can move forward. In terms of opportunities, I think the opportunities have never been greater for girls to actually do whatever activity they wish to do, partly because we've got social media now where you can see things that are not shown on television, right? But also television is catching up, and they're showing us, you know, women motocross riders. Yeah, who would have ever thought that we'd see that on TV, on the news? Because we actually do really, really well in a country in some sports and physical activities that are considered not mainstream. The fact that things like surfing, skateboarding are going to the Olympics, it means that those activities need to be more available for girls also. So I think the opportunity is great. And if we even look at the highest level at the Olympics, we've seen that participation is close to 50-50 in terms of athletes. Where it lags considerably is in the coaching area, as the work that Pauline's been involved in would show. I mean, it's something like, is it 11%, I think, of the coaches, some figure like that. So there's a massive discrepancy. So I think participation, we're doing pretty well. There are some issues though, because it's generally those that are privileged, that have access, can do this, that have money. We know that if we think of our compulsory education sector, so schools, not every girl that goes to school can do all the activities that she wishes to do, nor does she have opportunity to do so. So access and opportunity to participate depends very much on where you are, often your socioeconomic status, a whole lot of other factors. So there's a lot of room to move forward. And if we look at the school sector, there's only limited options. They often are focused around team sport and very traditional activities. And we know that girls often don't like doing those, right? So it's about thinking about how can you do this differently. And to be fair, Sport New Zealand is looking at this. They have a series of future workshops that they're running, which some people are part of, and to look at something different. And I know it's going out to wider New Zealand for feedback once there is something to work from. So I think we're trying to think about how this could look different going forward.
Awesome, thank you. Pauline, did you want to add to any of that?
No, that's fine. Well answered, Sarah.
Absolutely. And I just put some context around golf and coaching. We know that of our PGA professionals, only 15% of those are women. So absolutely, yep, spot on. We do have another question here from Sally Shaw. My province has equal numbers of men and women on the RSO, but women just get stuck with the women and girls concerns, and the men focus solely on the men and boys. Again, we have gender silos. Can New Zealand Golf do some educational work with RSOs so that they understand that the whole board is meant to work for the whole of golf in the province? P.S. I was the RSO board for 3 years, but stopped because of the silo effect and reluctance to modernise at many levels. Just push that on. Absolutely, we do plan to create some education through various modules and face-to-face, whether that be workshops or conferences, in particular that target clubs and our RSOs, so that we can work to fully understand what gender equity looks like in golf and explore that together and understand what we need to put into place to support our districts and support our clubs through a transition and any change that they wish to make. So to come.
And yes, and if I might come back to the points that we were talking about earlier about the qualities that women bring to the table, and to whether it's strategy, policy discussion, because we have unique qualities, and there's quite a lot of research, particularly by McKinsey, around leadership in business, which can be totally applied to the sports industry, in that some of the qualities we bring are around appreciation and valuing others, participative decision making, and I believe that many of these issues can be solved by really being confident in what we bring to the table in these qualities. In that, I think, Sally, you used the phrase "bang the drum" in one of your questions before, and it always feels as though we're doing that. But if we really believe that what we are doing is bringing something different to the table, which will result in persuasion and influence. By using those softer skills, I do believe we can make a difference. And one of those things would be persuade the group, the men, that these issues should be gender neutral, and that we should have, you know, a male and a female on each working group at least, so that we have got balanced work happening with the men and boys, and then similarly with the women and girls. But being actually proud and confident about those leadership qualities that we bring to the table.
Absolutely. Hey, we have one. I'm just getting conscious of time now because we are working into 10 to 3 there. We do have a question, and I don't know whether we might work collectively to answer this at a later date, or somebody wants to take a crack at it now. But our board, mainly men, is fully supportive of a gender neutral membership structure and have created a proposal for our members to vote on at our next AGM. However, our main barrier is our women members who wish to remain separated as a group rather than fully included into our club. Any advice on how we can move forward with positive change when a portion of our existing members don't agree? So this could well be an absolute rabbit hole question. I'm happy for us to park this and work to answer this in a follow-up email, but if either of you want to add a comment to that, or shall we park it for later?
I'll just got a quick response, and I guess I can understand probably why some women do feel that, because often when this has happened in the past, when sports have been merged, it's the women who come off worse in the end. So there's probably some lived experience that is making them nervous. So for me, it would be about finding out, well, what are the issues that they're concerned about? What guarantee is there about this actually being a change? And is this retrofitting into the existing system or structure, or is it creating actually a whole new structure that they have helped build from the bottom up? So I think that's probably why. That's just my initial response.
Yeah, and absolutely support that, Sarah. Any structure within an organisation should follow the vision and the values of that club or organisation. And if that has been really bottomed out and expressed properly, that the whole vision of the club is around diversity and in an inclusive culture, and the values have been shown to be expressed within everyday life, then I think then the membership structure could follow that. But to do it in isolation may come across some of those barriers, which you're right, will be put up by women as well.
Absolutely, and I think we'll work to potentially put some tips and ideas around that in a follow-up email as well, because I do know that it's quite a common issue. So we'll follow up with that one. Now, I'm conscious of the time. I do just want to ask you a really quick question. And can you just tell us a little bit about the momentum for women in sport at the moment, and what's currently happening in New Zealand and globally, and where we can look to focus our efforts to continue on the momentum?
So perhaps I could start from a global perspective. I mentioned the IWG earlier, which again is on the banner behind Sarah. And New Zealand Aotearoa is fortunate to be hosting the 8th World Conference on Women in Sport in Auckland in May in 2022. Now, obviously, this, because of the current situation with the virus, COVID virus, we don't know what the situation will be. So it's going to be a virtual physical hybrid, which I think is the way of the world anyway, regardless of the pandemic. And it will be the biggest global gathering on gender equality in women in sport. Now, we've developed an umbrella concept to guide our journey towards and through the conference, and that's called Change Inspires Change. And it's about every individual being empowered to come along this journey over the next 18 months, less than, and help to create a global community of action for women in sport. It really, for me, is the most exciting thing that's happened in sport globally. And the whole premise is about that every change, no matter how small, inspires the next change, and so on. And everyone can help effect change. I mean, that's the message. And if anybody wants to be involved in this process leading up to the conference to help us build the community of action, whether it be in golf or whether it's in sport or research, then just let me know, because we'd love to have you on board.
Thanks, Pauline. So I'll take it from here. So Ngā Wahine Ha Kina Kina o Aotearoa, so Women in Sport Aotearoa, was actually launched in 2017, so before the current government came in. And so we had already got a strategic plan, and our objective, or why we exist, is to transform society through leadership, research and advocacy to ensure that all women and girls can gain equity of opportunity to participate, compete and build careers in sport and active recreation. All right, so that's what we're here for, and we would love for women and girls to be valued, visible and influential in sport and active rec. Our three pillars are pretty similar to the government ones. So we have challenge the system, which is basically about being able to make an evidence-based case for why we need different systems and structures. We have lead the change, which is about leadership, increased representation of women and girls in leadership, and that's across all areas, be it the board, be it coaching, be it refereeing, umpiring, whole lot of areas. And then be the voice. So that's about women and girls having a powerful and respected voice. So being heard, being visible. And then we have the Take It Global, which is the IWG piece. So as the host of the IWG, which is a real privilege for us to be in this space and be able to connect with our colleagues across the world to really move forward what is happening in this space. And I really, really believe that the time is right to be doing this. And there's a whole lot of global movement coming together for us to make change. And post the IWG, what we obviously would like for Ngā Wahine Ha Kina Kina o Aotearoa is for us to be well respected both within Aotearoa and to carry on what we're doing, because it's not going to be done in 18 months, I can tell you that. That we also are well respected internationally for what we do. So a quick answer to your question.
I will, in the follow-up notes as well, I will link the details for Women in Sport Aotearoa and the IWG, because if you don't know about it, you should know about it. It's doing some incredible work. So I will link those in. And I think what's really exciting about this discussion, while we have addressed the challenges, there are so many opportunities, and I just here's so many opportunities that golf can adopt. You know, it's about creating quality, well-connected opportunities to learn, to play, to compete. It's about having welcoming clubs that value women and prioritize equitable opportunities to play. We have the opportunity to position golf as a sport that is for the family, it's to play with friends, it's enjoyable, has really strong health and well-being benefits. And we have the opportunity to position golf as an attractive industry to work and volunteer. And I think most importantly to me, we have this opportunity to lead by examples, to address our systems and our structures, and therefore enhance the experience for our current participants, but lay really strong foundations for our next generation of young girls. And what we hope to do at the Hui is really get into this in more detail, but in a golf context. So really share ideas, solutions, and case studies. And if one action you guys can take away from today, from Pauline's message there, change inspires change. It does not need to be a huge, massive action. Something small, something influential will make a huge impact. It adds to this humongous puzzle that we're all putting the pieces together in. So to continue this discussion, please make sure you register to our Women and Girls Hui. We would love to see you there. And I do just want to say a huge thank you to Pauline and Sarah for their time. And I honestly can't express how lucky we are to have them both sharing their wisdom and knowledge with us. I am aware of the time, and given that it is Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, I'd like to close our session with a karakia, if that's okay. So if you'd all just like to join me with that. He honore, he karoria, mangaronga ke te whenua, whakaro pai, ki ngā tangata katoa, ake ake, ake ake, amene. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you so much for your time again, and we'll see you on the 30th of November. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks,
Kia ora.
Emily.
Thank you.
See you
Thank you,
all.
guys. Thank you.